Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to a special edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. This is the review of The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert. We are back in the land of Star Wars, and I can't be happier. This episode, I think last week or it could have been the first episode of this season when I stated that The Mandalorian is as close to the original Star Wars as you probably going to get in the last 20 years. But this episode was Star Wars. This was uh, a throwback, if you will. I honestly felt like I was watching the original trilogy. This could have been a part of the original trilogy, which it is derived from that original trilogy, but it is, I don't know, it's just refreshing to see this and to get these stories that are kind of connected to that universe, still connected. It's still Star Wars, but in a original way and told through different eyes and different characters. And you sit down to see a Mandalorian episode and you get something completely different, and that's good, but still have the Mandalorian. We last left off in episode 18, The Mines of Mandalore, where Din Djarin, rather, he went to the living waters to redeem himself for taking off his helmet and dove into the waters. Well, really didn't dive on purpose. he he was walking in for his quote unquote baptism, and he went off a cliff unexpectedly and almost drowned. Where Bo-Katan went after him, and while retrieving him, she saw the mythical mythosaur, something that she just did not believe in. She thought all this was fairy tales and lies and just stuff to entertain Mandalorian children or whatever, or this Kree that existed for thousands of years and there's no evidence of it. A complete skeptic in its natural form. So she's battling within herself, like, okay, what did I just see? Did I really see what I think I saw? Is everything that I believed a lie? All these years, she never truly believed, and now all of a sudden it's like poof. it's it's an attitude adjustment in the craziest way. And uh we pick up in this episode, she's still sitting there. She's looking over the waters like, is this thing gonna pop back up? Was it really real? And Din Djarin wakes up, he recovers, and he's happy. He's been redeemed. He takes a little bit of the water as proof, and Bo Katan asks him like, okay, that's good. Did you see anything down there? You know, did you see anything? Just so happened to glance over and see something. She never tells him what she saw. Because deep down she still doesn't want to believe, even though her eyes don't lie. But inside of her soul, she still needs to be convinced. Even though she saw the mythosaur, she still needs to be convinced. The only way is like she's asking, begging, please, Din Djarin, please tell me you saw this, but he didn't see it. He didn't need to see it. He still believes in the Kree and everything of the Mandalorian people. So they um they're leaving. They're on their way back to her home planet, so Din Djarin can retrieve his ship and go back and show the armorer that he had indeed bathed in the living waters. While on their way back, they're encountered by an Imperial squad. And this is where it gets Star Wars. You know, we get a space battle between Bo-Katan's ship and some TIE fighters. And this is where I was thrown back into the old Star Wars. You know, I was giddy as a schoolgirl. I was just smiling cheek to cheek, you know, ear to ear, and just completely invested in this scene. And the camera work here during this battle, when they get back to I can't remember the name of the planet her little castle is on, and the close-ups, the like the mounting of the camera on the ship, and you see the landscape behind them, and it's like, oh my god! The whole while I'm watching this, in my mind, I'm thinking like, boy, they put Disney Plus put a pretty penny into this show. This is some top-notch visual effects that will rival any movie in a theater. I mean, some really good special effects. Boy, they spent some money on this show, and it's paying off. I can tell it looked amazing. This show was directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who, I mean, he shot this show beautifully. Um, Not just the action scenes with the little space battles, but also in the more quiet scenes towards the middle of this episode that we're gonna get to. But yeah, that was awesome. The scene where Din Djarin exits out of the Bo-Katan ship and goes down to his ship, that was awesome. Um, the bombing of the castle, Bo-Katan trying to go after the ships that bombed her castle, and come to find out there were more. It was a setup. There was a whole bunch of them, and they had to run. And so they warp off, and he's like, "Okay, where are we going?" And Bo-Katan asked Din Djarin, "Where are we going? Where?" He's like, "Nowhere they'll find us. Nowhere they'll ever find us." However he had put it, and they warp off. So initially, I'm like, "Okay, now we about to pick up where they're warped to." No, we go to a whole nother story that engulfs the whole episode. And for the first like 2 minutes, I was like, "Oh, what this has to do with anything?" I was invested in the Mandalorian and Bo-Katan, and them trying to flee the Empire. And I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. But we get reintroduced to the scientists from, I want to say, season one, episode one, if I'm not mistaken, or chapter one, however you want to put it. Uh, that was the last time we seen him, and that was Dr. Pershing. And I love this character. I didn't too much care about him when we first saw him, but in this episode, I fell in love with this character, which makes it so tragic what happened at the end. I was so disappointed at the end. I wanted more from Dr. Pershing. Um, and we also reintroduced to what's her name? I know her last name is Kane. Can't think of her first name, but anyway, commanding officer Kane. And once again, didn't care about that character when I saw her before. I think it was just a little pop up cameo, and it was set up last season maybe, and finally it pays off in this episode. Her character and what exactly was going on, and even with all that was going on, I still believe that maybe there was a chance that she was redeemed, but we found out differently. So we return to Coruscant, and once again, the visuals. This is a beautiful looking planet or city. Well, the whole planet is an entire city. We learned in this episode, and uh, we have old Imperial officers who went through this kind of a rehabilitation program, and now they're in the amnesty program where they have been pardoned by the New Republic. So they can work amongst everybody else. They've been redeemed. And Dr. Persing was one of them, and there were a few more. There were actually a lot more who, I guess you could say, defected from the Empire. After the Empire fell, they had no other choice. But they they're here too. He thought he was the only one, and Dr. Persing, you could tell, was not with it. He gave his speech when we were reintroduced to him, how he never wanted to be a part of the Empire. He really didn't have a choice in the matter. So that was never him. And his research that's dealing with cloning, and we're going to touch in on that at the end of this review. My theories on where we heading here. Uh, that's something that the Empire was very heavily invested in. So he's, living his day to day, trying to, you know, reacclimate with society, I guess you could say. And we have Officer Kane, who was on Dolph, who worked with Golf, what's his name? Moff Gideon. That's his name, Moff Gideon. And he recognized her. They worked on the same ship, so they knew each other, but they didn't know each other. And so now they get to know each other. They're hanging out, having fun. They're becoming friends and whatnot, and it was real good. And this lasted for about 40 minutes of this episode, and you're like, man, this is such good stuff. There's no action going on, but you're invested in these characters, and that's from good writing and good direction, that you can get invested in these characters that quick with limited time to get invested with them, or to them rather. And I was so impressed by the acting here. um Dr. Persing is portrayed by, and I'm gonna try to get his name right, God help me, uh is Ahmed Abtuhe. Forgive me, please, if I butchered your name. If he's listening, thank you for listening. But he did an awesome job. I've loved his portrayal of this character. He was so nice, and it. You don't get characters like this on TV or in movies. He was just a relatable guy. He's just a normal guy. He's a scientist and he wants to help people. And his main thing for the cloning thing, or trying to work on this cloning thing, he tells the story about his mother, how his mother heart stopped, and if he would have had this technology back then, he would have been able to save his mother, and that's his motivation for coming up with this, so he can help other people. It was never about, you know being a part of the Empire and taking over the galaxy. It was to help people, but the Empire was his best shot at achieving this goal. So he is such a warm individual, and it hurt at the betrayal that Kane uh just turned him in, right? And just, just stabbed him in the back. It was just brutal. It was a brutal scene when they went to the old shipyard of the old Imperial ships and everything, so he can get the materials he need to continue his cloning research. And this is all orchestrated by Kane. So, uh, you know, talked him up to do it, and he didn't want to do it at first, but it's just that little seed. She didn't force him to do it. It was just planting those seeds. Like, oh, you worked your whole life for this. Oh, remember your mother. Oh, do this and that and this, and it built up to the point where, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna continue my research, even though the New Republic does not want them, or him rather, to do this. So they sneak into the ship to get all the materials he needed, but we find out that Kane set him up, just to get the materials, which we could all agree, just to bring back to Moff Gideon, who we heard one of the amnesty people say that, oh, I heard that he escaped from the War Trials Tribunal. So he's out here. So it's a possibility that he pops back up. So pretty much a no-brainer that Moff Gideon will pop back up. So she was able to get it that way. And they bring him to this mind wiping thing, this the mind flare, I think they called it, and this procedure to wipe his mind, and you know, uh that way the new republic can start over with him, and he can come back into society without these thoughts of redoing his research. Well, uh Kane was able to convince one of the officers to leave her alone while she watches over him. It was supposed to be a little light procedure, but she sabotaged the machine, and it looks like it's going to kill him. They didn't show it, but that's that was the end of Dr. Percy. And man, it was heartbreaking. That was really heartbreaking. And you think that's the end of the episode? No, we're bookended with Mandalorian. We wipe from there and we return to Din Djarin and Bo-Katan exiting the warp, and now they're on the planet, the Convert, where we first visited in the first episode of this season, where the armorer told Din Djarin that he had to go to Mandalore and bathe in the living waters and whatnot. So he's returning to show the proof that he actually did bathe in the waters. So while there, Bo-Katan tells who she is, and everybody knows who she is because she was in a clan, a high-ranking clan. Actually, her father was like the leader of the Mandalorians, if I'm not mistaken, or the king, or something to that effect. I forgot how it went, but anyways, she was a witness. She said she was a witness. She explained the story that yeah, he went in, uh, he almost drowned, and I went in after him. So technically, she bathed in it too. So the armorer tested the water, and sure enough, he wasn't lying. It is the living waters. So he being Din Djarin has been redeemed. At the same time, the armorer tells Bo-Katan, well, since you went in too, you are also redeemed. And she was like, yeah, that's fine and all, but I don't walk the way. She's still being her defiant self. She still doesn't quite believe in the creed. She doesn't want to walk the way, even though she saw what she saw. you know, and the armorer hit her. It was a gut punch on this one. She like, okay, you did go into the living waters, right? And she like, yeah. Have you took off your helmet since? And it didn't dawn on me. I'm pretty sure all of you who watched it, you probably realized it, but I'm slow. It didn't dawn on me. She hadn't taken off her helmet, and she she had had her helmet on the whole time. And she says no. After a little pause, she's like, no, I haven't removed it. And you're like, well, this is the way. And they all greeted both Din Djarin and Bo-Katan back into the Mandalorian clan. And so that was the end of the episode. Um, that leads me to my theory. My theory about this cloning thing. I'm more than certain everybody here who's listening to this review, who is watching The Mandalorian, is a Star Wars fan in some shape, form, or fashion. So that lets me know that you have watched Rise of Skywalker, for better or worse. Not my favorite Star Wars film. Uh, I mean, nowhere near my favorite Star Wars film. It's probably my least favorite Star Wars film. But we know in that film, and in case you haven't seen it, which is mind boggling to me, spoilers for the Rise of Skywalker. Um, Palpatine returned in the Rise of Skywalker, the Emperor. So we find out that he returned through cloning, through this cloning technology or whatever. I believe that this is a precursor to the technology used to resurrect Palpatine. Because let's not forget, Mandalorian is set between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. So it's in between that stint of time. And so it would make sense that this is why they being Moff Gideon is looking to retrieve this technology. Once again, it's a theory. I Not a real far-fetched theory, because I don't. What other reason will there be for this effort to get this cloning technology stuff? So, yeah, man. Good show, good episode, real good episode. My favorite of the season so far. We only 3 episodes in, but this is my favorite. I really, really enjoyed this episode. As I said before, this episode was directed by Lee Isaac Chung. I haven't seen anything that he did in the past, but I am looking forward to something that he is working on right now. Lee Isaac Chung is the director of a film that's coming out next year, I think. I don't think they started filming it yet, but it is a sequel to probably one of the biggest guilty pleasures of all time, and that is Twister. Lee Isaac Chung is directing the sequel to Twister, Twisters. And I must say, I didn't care about the Twister sequel until I saw this episode, and I was like, yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it now. That's how well this episode was directed, and it was also written by Noah Clore and John Favreau. This is good stuff, man. This is good stuff. The Mandalore, Chapter 19, The Convert gets a letter grade of an A. Good episode. Can't wait for next week. This is exciting, man. I was looking forward to season 3 of Mandalorian, but I didn't think I was going to be this invested. I didn't think I was going to have this much fun with it. And I'm having the best time of my life. This is some good stuff. The storytelling here, my God, mwah, great job by John Favreau, who's written all the episodes. And he said in the interview that he already written all the episodes for season 4. So he knows what he's doing when it comes to this character and the Star Wars franchise as a whole. I don't know how he's doing it. I really don't. I dare I say he's doing equal to or even better than George Lucas at Star Wars content. I know that's blasphemy, people. I get it, but come on, man. You can't tell me this isn't the best Star Wars we've gotten in years. Years. I'm talking going back to the original trilogy. And so I am so happy with this show. What's more important though, how are you feeling about The Mandalorian? You can contact me by email, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact me on Twitter at KB Radio Network. And on other social media platforms, just look up the KB Radio Network. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you're currently listening to this show, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, sharing this show, and subscribing to the channel. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of The Mandalorian, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert. Can't wait to speak to you next week for Chapter 20 of The Mandalorian. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.